in a document that published after this and sent to all the schools in the nation, I guess, as one of 7 programs that were models for preventing hate in the schools.
You're about as waspy as they come. Why should a wasp like you care about hate crime?
You know, it's a good question. What is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant straight male from Orange County, California, spend his life working for civil rights and standing up to hate mongers? You know, my parents raised us to believe that we had been given much, and that because we'd been given much, much was expected of us. And so for me, I get a lot from feeling like I'm doing something that makes the world a better place. And that motivates me to do that. I love that work. I love that feeling of giving that makes
Describe that feeling to us, please.
I get this sense that today I did something that is going to help alleviate suffering. And to me, I mean, there's nothing that compares to that sense of accomplishment, that sense that I've left the world a better place, that my children and their children will maybe not have to suffer some of the things that their parents did. Yeah, my wife is Mexican American, so her dad has suffered pretty much every one of the kind of classic discriminatory things. He went to school in the basement of a school with all the other Mexican and Indian children, where the white kids were up on the main floor, segregated by grade. There was one classroom with all of the Mexicans and Indians, and one classroom regardless of age. He was served in the Navy in the war, but he comes home to a situation where you know, he's out at night on a weekend, and he's beaten up and stripped by sailors, you know, because he's Mexican during the Zoot Suit riots. You know, I mean, you just think of he's not allowed into the Huntington Beach Municipal Pool except on the last day before they drain it. Only white people until the end before they drain them. You just, you know, the whole panoply. So my kids have seen and heard and learned of all those stories. My hope is that someday those will be ancient memories that they won't see in the current realm.
Are your siblings as committed to service as you are?
My siblings are just amazing people. I really love each one of them. They all give in a different way. My sister Sharon runs the newspaper, the Fullerton Observer, and she works 80 hours a week.
For little money.
She doesn't even make minimum wage. She doesn't even have health care. She, you know, for a 62-year-old woman, she's flying without much protection. And, you know, that's a huge service. My sister Kathy is one of the greatest math teachers that Santa Cruz ever had. And she takes each child and just gives them so much, inspires them. And she's also been a foster parent for kids, a foster adopt and emergency placement, has adopted some of those kids and done an amazing job with her own children as well as her foster kids. My sister Roxanne, who, you know, built her own place with her husband, you know, in Humboldt County, where they raise some of their own food, and she's devoted her life to her child. She adopted an infant that had been come from a difficult situation in terms of nutrition and drug abuse of parents, and the child also was bipolar and has struggled with that challenge, you know, all her life. Now she's in her late 20s, and my sister has just devoted an incredible amount of time and energy to that, including facilitating other groups to share some of her learnings on how to deal with the healthcare system and what does it feel like for bipolar children, what's it from their perspective, what parents can do, and lessons and stuff. She's an amazing person. My brother Gary, the youngest in our crew, He heads up he runs fabrication plants, and he's just an amazing person to work for. I think the way he raises his children, the way he lives his life, the way he deals with his employees and colleagues, is all about being a good person and living that good life that sends out positive things in the world. And then my sister Margot, who came along later, she was adopted. Is an amazing woman who, the fact that she survived her childhood is amazing. The wonderful mother that she became, the difficult things that she's encountered in her work with young people, and her work also in civil rights, just amazing. So,
and
each in their own way.
You attribute this to your parents' parenting. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's all about my parents. They were amazing people.
You were on one of California State Attorney General's Hate Crime Commission. Which Attorney General was that?
Yeah, when Bill Lockyer was the Attorney General of the state of California, he created a Civil Rights Commission on hate crime, and appointed me, among others, to serve on that commission, to look at what's being done in this state. Bill was one of the first in the country to author legislation when he was a senator to sort of identify and define what hate crime is. He codified that phrase, used it in the law, and made California's laws the best hate crime laws in the state. So Bill pulled that together, and we served in that capacity.
Why would someone who maybe comes from a background like you, but doesn't feel the same inspiration for you, maybe to date they haven't cared at all about civil rights, it doesn't occur to them why they should care what happens to an undocumented alien or an Arab immigrant or whatever. Why should they care about what happens to someone who it seems to them is alien from them, different, apart, separate?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. What is it that I find as motivation? Maybe that would help to get at it. For instance, people use the term illegal alien.
You notice I did not.
I did notice how you used that, but I know you're going to be edited out of this, so I thought I'd better say it in some way.
Okay.
People use that term, illegal alien. I appreciate you didn't. And that term, illegal alien, it places on a person a connotation that I think is false, and that is that it can be illegal
To be them.
to be alive, to be a human being. There are no illegal human beings. There are only illegal acts. And in the case of this large category of people who we dehumanize with that kind of a label, I met a young person the other day, and this person was brought across the border unbeknownst to them when they were an infant, and raised here, spent their whole life here, didn't have any interaction really of a significant way with Mexico, spoke just like my kids, any other native Southern Californian, and didn't know they were undocumented till they went to get a job and found that they didn't have a Social Security card and couldn't get one, and learned suddenly that they're undocumented. Should those children then be deported? They've never broken any law. They're only, they are here without the permission of the United States government, but that was done under the jurisdiction that preempts that, which is an infant child goes where a parent takes them. So should we be punishing that child for the sins of the parents or the breaking of these civil laws by the parents? I don't think so. So I'd be a person that says these political lines that we draw between countries are done for reasons. It has to do with nationalism and creating boundaries, and I think they have a purpose, and we need to observe those. But there are more important things in the world, and some of them are that human beings are human beings, and we should have compassion for them. So, I think that just because you're lucky now and things are going well, it doesn't mean it'll always be that way. So I think people should be concerned about people, other human beings, whether it's the suffering of someone in, you know, across the world in Darfur or Senegal or the Congo or Mexico, or, you know, 200 yards from this office in Santa Ana, where Santa Ana is the densest community in the United States. There are more people in this city per square mile than Manhattan, New York City. It's the densest. It's also one of the highest numbers of undocumented immigrants in the United States. I think fourth immigrant. It's kind of a window for that. Their school district is 95% Latino. This is the county seat for the County of Orange. Changed a lot. It's a little different than people's perspective. But I think if you look at a human being, you know, you don't say, you know, that this little 2-year-old has fallen and is crying because they cut their hand and you can't see their parents. You don't say, well, where are your legal papers? Or you go and you try to comfort the child. And so I think being being a human being and caring about others is a part of our obligation, you know, for being on this planet. And the fact that you're fortunate and privileged today, that may change. Maybe you should think about some of the other people and making a better place for everybody. So enlightened self-interest.
Why is it in Anglo-Americans' self-interest to extend legal protections and civil rights to other ethnic and cultural groups?
Well, it's not just about Anglo-Americans. It's not just about race, and race is pretty much a political distinction in the first place. Let me talk instead about privilege. Let's talk about the 1%. Why is it in the interest of the 1%, those that hold most of the wealth of our country? Why is it in their interests to worry about the wages and hours and health care of a lowly immigrant in Santa Ana?
Great answer. That's a good question.
And I think that the answer is that it's enlightened self-interest. In the end, if you have all the marbles and other people are starving, they're going to come and take your marbles.
And you might get hurt in the process.
They're going to cut off your head. That's the French Revolution way. It happens in most revolutions. And essentially, if you're smart enough to think about it, it's not just about giving charity. It's about giving parity. It's about sharing power. It's about having a society where all people feel enfranchised and enough to make this world a safer place for everyone. For just as vulnerable as their children are today, your grandchildren may be in that same situation someday. I think that Hebrew kind of sense that charity is about justice is a good one. And I think charity's definition in the United States is interpreted different ways by different people also. So you see movements in the philanthropic world that are much more oriented towards empowerment, teaching a person to fish rather than just giving them fish, and understanding the larger issues there as opposed to just the charity, which is me, you know, giving lowly you some
stick,
you know, some minor thing. In the early 60s, the Rumford Fair Housing Act was passed in California. And the Rumford Fair Housing Act made it illegal to discriminate against people in the rental or sale of housing. And that law was overturned by initiative. In fact, that was the first political thing I ever did in my life. My dad took me door to door in the Prop 14 at that time. That was we were fighting against this proposition to overturn the Fair Housing Act. And it was overturned, but that was challenged. And